So team, welcome to the webinar, AI agents for supply chain. I wanted to ask a question. I did hit in the webinar chat, who has deployed an agent? Anyone? Please comment if you want to on the chat and just let us know as we're going through this. We can make it relate to you more. And we'll, as we walk through this, we'll try to respond to you. We've got James and I on today, so we can hit a little bit as we go through it. So a little bit Q&A, you have a Q&A box that you can use, and you can also hit just the standard chat, and we'll try to watch both. We will be recording and sharing all the slides, so feel free to, as we go through this, you'll be able to ask questions and stuff. With that, Jamie Engesser, wow, that's a good, much better picture of me than I am today. That was in my youth. I run our field I'm a field CTO, and I run our field engineering team. So responsible for how do we go to market and how do we help our customers deploy AI agents in action. My past lives, I've been in the big data and analytics space for the last 12 years of my life, helped take a company from zero to across M&A and stuff up to almost $1 billion and over 1,000 customers actively using us. So that's my past life. And in this one, I am helping customers deploy agents, and that's my primary goal. So with that, that's me. James, let me let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jamie. My picture's from some time ago as well. I think I'm going to keep it that way for a couple of years. Very nice to meet everybody. My name's James Beard, and I'm one of our pre-sales engineers here at Semaphore. Most of my background in my career has been in helping large enterprise companies implement software. So it's been really fun to work with our closest customers to help them build agents and get those implemented in their environment. So excited to be here.
Awesome. So a little agenda for today, and hopefully this will take 30 to 45 minutes, and we'll have some Q&A at the end with all of you. First, want to hit a little bit of just who is Semaphore.ai, a little bit of the supply chain challenge, some customer perspective, the use case, and then we're going to jump into a demo of the solution, and then we'll do a summary recap and open to Q&A after that. And hopefully we'll go through this relatively quickly to keep you guys awake. So as we go through, feel free to hit chat and stuff with questions. So first off, I think who is Semaphore? It's probably easier to explain who is Semaphore not than who is Semaphore. So I think the first area I'd push us to is the purpose-built. When you look at the AI agent ecosystem, you're going to see there's a lot of purpose-built solutions out there, specific to things like call center, chatbots, etc. The Sierras, the 11Xs come to mind with a lot of funding in that space. It's really designed to solve one problem for one area of the business. That may be a horizontal area of the business, but nonetheless, it's really designed to solve one area for one problem in the business. It tends not to be a platform solution. There's a second area, which is the do-it-yourself. And that's frankly, I would say 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, even up to 3 years ago, the do-it-yourself frameworks have been a primary way to get things done. It's developer-centric. I'm going to take my Python code, I'm going to go develop a solution, and then I'm going to deploy that and run it. The big nuances to that is what we're learning in the do-it-yourself area is the iteration that's required to support the business is just really difficult to keep up with. So the do-it-yourself tends to be great for a developer-focused person, and for a small area, tends not to be great for an enterprise organization. The third area we see is the ecosystem-centric. If you've ever heard of copilots, I think between Microsoft and Google and then Agentforce, you'll see there's a lot of where the big cloud providers are giving a copilot type of experience where they're trying to link their products together and make them work better together. So those are what we would call ecosystem-centric. It's really designed to optimize your use of their platform, integrate the use of their platform across and make it easier. When you look at Semaphore and what we like to think of as the enterprise agent factory, we look at ourselves as business focused, and you'll see that in a few areas today. Number one is we want to engage. We believe most outcomes are defined by the business for the business. Therefore, they should be the ones that are designing, building, and deploying these agents. So that's where we come from, and that's where we spend all of our time, is in that center. And that means that we can do a lot of things. That means we can help in customer service, we can help in inventory management, we can help in supply chain, so we can help in a lot of different areas. If you think about that, and if you think about that as the AI agent platform, a couple of things come to mind is and where we see deployments. Our customers look everywhere from HR agents, because finding the right talent right now is really difficult. Bringing them through the process is not efficient. So, all the way from HR agents to legal to finance to procurement to analytics, all the way over to risk. When I look at those represent kind of a holistic view of lots of different agents that people are deploying out there. We've even had a customer recently that analyzes risk based on annual reports. They wanted us to look at annual reports, evolve, go through the annual report, give them 25 fields out of that annual report, and they leverage that in their risk models that they are ultimately moving into us as well. It's a great example where you can do lots of complex things with an AI agent to help your life get a lot simpler. They spend about a day doing these evaluations. We think we can bring it down to literally minutes for them. So it's a good example of risk management. We got a couple of different agent types, conversational and worker, and you're going to see James walk through those a little bit deeper. But those two conversational types, a worker just happens in the background. It's continuously running and working to do whatever needs to be done next. Conversational is interactive. It's what you think of when you go to Chat GPT or OpenAI type stuff. With that, that represents a broad stroke of semaphore agents. If we think about what's important to do this, it's things that are these need to be defined in English, completely understandable. They need to run autonomously. They just need to run in the background and just run continuously. Um, they need to support transparent reasoning. I have to have faith in the agent. If I want to have faith in the agent, I've got to understand the reasoning that it's using to do the work. And then it's got to be secured and governed. We have to put, I will say, agents through the same scrutiny that traditional softwares went through in the enterprise to make sure it's trusted by the enterprise. So that security and governance is a big deal. With that, that represents kind of semaphore and kind of how we think of the world. If we think about how do you go about building an AI agent platform in your enterprise, there's a couple of key people. And I'll say this is bookended on each side. You're going to notice business process owner and business user. We think that fundamentally the business process owner owns the outcome. Therefore, they have to be engaged in the definition as well as the consumption of AI agents. In the middle, there's a couple other people involved. We know that not everything can be done in a runbook. There's times where I need to integrate to Oracle apps, or I need to integrate to SAP, or I need to integrate into different systems. So we have the AI developer notion, and we allow you to use VS Code or Cursor to go write new actions that can be deployed and consumed by the business process owner. We also know there's an operator persona. This has to run in my environment, in my AWS environment, or as of last week, we just announced we can also run in Snowpark container services. So we can run in Snowflake as well. So the good news is we need to run and manage that entire platform within your environment. And the last area is that user, the business user that logs into Workroom and can do their work on a daily basis. If you think of all these areas, it gives you some choices, and I'll highlight at the bottom. Number one is bring your LLM. We're not in the LLM game. We can use AWS Bedrock with Claude. We can use OpenAI. We can use Azure. So we have choices there. So choose what you want. We've even done a bunch of testing in the DeepSeek stuff, and it's super interesting. We're still a little bit biased right now on some other solutions. Secondly, we know we need to run out in the cloud, so we run in your cloud. I mentioned AWS, and we run in the AWS VPC. We also run in Snowpark. And the last thing is using your data. So whether it's sitting in Snowflake or any other source, we can get to and leverage your data. So with that, that gives you kind of the number one, the people involved, and then kind of where we run in that environment. Let's talk a little bit about supply chain, the reason hopefully we're all here today. If I think about supply chain, it's interesting. Between the governmental impacts, we all know we've seen the volatility. My wife reminds me at the grocery store every week. Costs are not going down yet. There's also the shipping side. How do I get stuff around? And then there's customs and border patrol impacts. We've got a customer over in Europe that shifts to 50 countries. One of their biggest bottlenecks is getting through customs. So how do they do that? And that goes all the way through to HR, governance, risk, compliance, et cetera. But when you look at it between the market volatility, operational complexity, the gaps in the data visibility across the different ERP systems to track, and then the fact that we can't find enough resources to do this. And then on top of that, compounded is the regulatory compliance areas. What we find is supply chain has been an area where AI agents can have a huge impact and a big focus on it. What we're seeing when we spend time with our customers in the supply chain side, um, we see a few things. Number one is the legacy systems just don't meet the demands. So whether it's SAP or Salesforce or your warehouse management system or your logistics, there's a reality post-pandemic that people want to move more and more towards real time. They need real-time understanding, real-time action. And they also can't hire enough knowledge workers to process and do the work. So finding those knowledge workers to link those legacy systems is getting more and more difficult. And then if you look at that and you say, what is the current solution to these gaps? There's a bunch of RPA solutions. If you ask any good business analysts, they've probably got 20 spreadsheets they use to do the work. But at the end of the day, it lacks pattern matching. It's hard to replicate in a way. And it's very difficult for the analyst to capture the decision making that was used to do the work or do the work they need to be done. And it's a heavy lift for the development teams to continue to try to integrate these systems. What's the desired state? I'll kind of skip forward a little bit and here we'll hit a little bit more of this, but the desired state's this notion of a digital conversational real-time process, transparent business rules that are defined by the business, ran by the business, executed by the business, and monitored by the business. Scalable implementation. I don't have problems with going big or small with it. And ultimately, we get the ability to have predictive analytics that give us some level of demand planning, historic versus current versus what's the expected future. And all of that done without changing my core systems that are there today and working. People, last thing they want to do is go in and do a rip and replace of an ERP system. So when you look at this in the supply chain world, there's this desired state of don't touch systems, just make it easier for me to run my business. If we look at in an agent world in the supply chain, what does good look like? Um, that desired state, you're going to see some scenarios today where we talk about the first two, a little bit about inventory management, a little about demand forecasting, but whether it's pricing and promotions, whether it's proactive supplier management, logistics and logistical planning, a whole bunch of these areas are areas where we're seeing now AI agents are being deployed to go assist in these areas. And what we find is each one of these areas is a different system, a different knowledge worker that needs to be integrated together, and a different set of actions that need to come from that. With that as a context, let's jump in here. So if you look at the industries, whether it's automotive, fashion apparel, retail and e-commerce, or pharmaceutical, they all represent the challenges of supply chain. Today, we're going to jump into food and beverage, and I'm going to head over to James to let him take over and walk through a little demonstration. He'll set that up first. James?
Fantastic. Thanks, Jamie. Let me share out really quick and go from here.
Should I stop sharing? I will stop sharing to let you share out.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Can everybody see okay?
Betcha.
All right, awesome. Well, team, I'm excited to be here. And as Jamie mentioned, we wanted to walk you through, we wanted to spend the back half of this meeting just walking you through some examples, right? Actually show you some agents in the product. And we've done a lot of work over the last couple months with several customers that have supply chain focused use cases. And we didn't want to use any customer data or examples, but we wanted to just kind of build out a super simple example use case that kind of follows some of the themes and trends that we're seeing in this area. And so the use case that we built out for you today is focused on inventory optimization, which is a common problem and challenge across a lot of different industries. But today we'll look at it in the context of a food and beverage company, more specifically a grocery store type of an organization. So what we've heard across a lot of different industries is and particularly in the food and beverage industry, is there are a lot of different types of inventory management related challenges, right? And as we start to think about the data that we maintain and manage on a daily basis, we're oftentimes looking back to that inventory table and what do we have on hand, and how do we manage it so that we don't have any stock outs and we don't waste any goods, right? Specifically in this industry, you've got to think about perishable goods and they have expiration dates, and we need to think about how do we optimize the inventory we have on hand so that we get it at the right time, and also we sell it and turn it over before it expires. And so all of the decision making is often today reactive to all these different factors that can impact it, different promotions that we have planned, even the things like the weather and other external factors that we just don't have control over. And so, a lot of times, a lot of these organizations we're working with just have this frustration because they're very reactive to some of these external factors and managing their inventory. And what that results in ultimately is a lot of waste downstream, or stockouts, and we've got unhappy customers and things like that downstream. So how do we build an agent that can help look at that information in real time and proactively think to the worker agent, that autonomous agent that Jamie talked about, autonomously and on a recurring basis, take a look at our data, take a look at our inventory, take into consideration other things like external factors like the weather, upcoming promotions, and things like that to help us make better decisions about when we need to reorder, what we should reorder. And then we'll also show you how do we also make predictions about the future. So not just making better decisions in real time and being proactive, but also how do we build an agent that can help us look at historical data to make predictions about the future so that we're better prepared. So that's kind of the context of what we wanted to build out and show you. I'm gonna actually, what I'm gonna do, team, is actually pull up Semaphore Studio and walk you through the product, and then we'll show you the agent use case built out just to give you a feel for the power of what agents can do. I want to preface, team, me and Jamie are not supply chain experts. We are just we'll walk you through a sample run book here. So just use this as kind of an art of the possible illustration to see what agents can do. And hopefully we'll do a good job of demonstrating kind of the power of the Semaphore platform. So what you guys are seeing here on the screen is our Semaphore Studio product. And that is a local download to your laptop it's really your main tool with Semaphore to help you build, test, and iterate on agents as you're building them in your local environment. This is available currently on both Mac and Windows, so available for lots of type of users and designed for our business user persona to be able to quickly build agents and get them deployed without having to dive into a bunch of code. So let's spend just a minute or two walking through how do we build an agent. And so with Semaphore, our goal is to make that as simple as possible. And here on the agents tab, you guys can see I've got a bunch of demo agents that we've built and that we show to customers. How you would create an agent is you'd go to the agents tab, you'd click create a new agent, and then you'd select either conversational or worker agent, those two types of agents that Jamie mentioned. Conversational would be used for use cases where we want to proactively reach out to that agent and ask for something. And the worker agent would be one of those autonomous agents that's really working for you in the background, getting work done, and reaching out to you only when there's an important alert or an action that you need the human to take. So I like to show all the demos in the conversational mode because it's much more interactive and way more fun for us to walk you through it. So after we do that, team, just 5 quick steps to create an agent. You give it a name and a description. This is just for you to understand what's the name of it, what does it do? And then the primary driving force here is, and what really is our secret sauce at Semaphore, is the run book. And think of the run book as the training guide for the agent. This is where you as the business user define very simply put, what you want the agent to do. So think of this as summarizing your business process. A lot of things that would go into this would be our process flows, our standard operating procedures, all those types of things that, we look at today when we're training a new employee. That's how you would think about giving the agent the context it needs to work through your steps and have the context to be able to reason through decisions it needs to make along the way. So, team, you can see we give you a standard template out of the box to help you get started, just to give you some best practice tips on the sections to put in here, what types of information to give the agent context about. But really our goal here, team, is to make it easy for you to be able to just write your business process the way you would write it out if you're training a new person on your team. And that's really what this comes down to, is you don't have to build this out in code. You would just give the agent the context of your business process here in the run book. Once we've built the run book, we can select an LLM. We support multiple out of the box right now, and we're going to continue to grow that list. And once you've connected your LLM, you've added your run book. I'll just use an example here. The next thing you want to do is give it access to actions, right? The actions team, think of those as the hands and feet, as Jamie was going over, to really help your agent connect to your enterprise systems, right? We don't want a chat GPT that's just going to give us a summary. We want our agents to be able to access your enterprise systems, go get data back and be able to use that to make decisions. And then ultimately maybe even be able to write back to those systems as well. So we have a pre-built library of actions that you can just use out of the box. A couple of examples here as I'm scrolling through CRM systems, the Microsoft suite, things like Linear, Salesforce, Zendesk, ServiceNow, and you would just add that to your agent, and then ultimately, you can once you've filled out these 5 steps, you can go deploy that agent and start to chat with it instantly. So team, well, what I want to do is I want to show you our supply chain example for inventory management. So let's open that up and then we'll take a look at a couple of examples. So team, I've got a preset chat here, but I want to do this live with you just to kind of walk you through how we should think about interacting with these agents. So as we start to look at a demo, the first thing I always like to do is ask the agent, hi, what can you do for me? And team, what this is going to do, we'll open up the run book in just a second, but this agent is contextually aware of its role and its purpose and the tools that it has to be able to go get that process you've defined in the run book done. So when I ask it what it can do, it's going to give me a little bit of a summary of things that this agent can do. And just for context, I'm going to open up the run book here for you. And you can see this is just a sample process. This is not based on any customer examples, but just kind of illustrates some themes of things we've seen in the industry. Gave the agent a brief objective and then an overview of its instructions and its core responsibilities. Today, we'll take a look at how this agent might look at our perishable goods in our store, and how can we optimize what we need to do with those? How do we make better decisions about how to discount those things? Just general inventory management. How do I keep a good grasp on what is low on stock? When do I need to reorder? And then ultimately not just making those real-time decisions, but demand forecasting and making sure we're ready for the upcoming weeks and months. And so as I kind of scroll through this run book, you guys can start to get a feel for some of the contextual things I've given it on as it's working through and helping me with an inventory analysis. What are the things I need to do, from identifying the minimum thresholds we want to maintain on hand? How do I calculate the days of supply that I need for each type of product? And then ultimately, how do I help with reordering those things? This is all completely in English language, as you can see. So very natural language, very easy to come in here and draft this out. And more importantly, if the agent's not behaving as expected, you've got the ability to quickly come back in here and make a tweak to those instructions and then save and redeploy that run book to the next version of the agent. So a couple of things I'm going to ask here, team, is I'm going to ask this agent something generic like, can you help me help tell me what goods are about to expire in the store? And so, team, this is where you'll start to see the agent use some of those tools that we call actions to go get data, connect to enterprise systems, and bring that data back to help us make decisions with it. So just to show you a couple of examples, team, we've connected this agent to our Semaphore Snowflake instance. And we built a couple of actions to help us be able to go do things like check data that's sitting in our inventory tables, go look at our historic transaction data, help us make predictions against things that we need to think about for the future. And so when I asked this agent to help me understand what's about to expire, it's got an action or a tool for that. And it's going to go read into that Snowflake table, pull back just the necessary data that we need to help make decisions. And then not only did it give me a quick summary of the items that are about to expire, it actually helps make some recommendations. This is all based on the context I gave it in the run book, right? There's things that are going to expire within 1 to 2 days. Those are critical items we need to take action on, and we probably need to give those things a huge price discount to make sure we get them off the shelf and we don't have to throw them away. And so, um, we don't just want to stop there with information. We also want to be able to continue to take action. So I'm going to ask this agent to actually help me update those prices. So I don't have to go, the information's great, but I don't want to have to go in if this agent has the capability to be able to update those prices for me. And so this agent has an action to be able to go into Snowflake, update those prices in our point of sale system. So you can see we get a quick summary here of the old price, the new price, and ultimately the discount that we applied to try to get those products off the shelf. So great. Next question. Can you tell me what we're low on stock on? Half the time, a lot of our customers don't have a great way to summarize this without potentially printing a report, waiting on it to run, and then getting it from IT. With an agent, we've got the ability to quickly connect to that data source, that Snowflake table, and then pull back what we're low on stock in, right? So we maintain minimum stock unit thresholds. When our current inventory drops below that, we want to be able to know that. You can see again, we get some more insight about each one of these types of products that we're low on stock with. And what do we need to do? Great. I want this agent to help me reorder all those items. And so that what this agent can do is use another action to actually go place, look up who those vendors are, look up past pricing and things like that, and actually submit orders with those vendors to make sure that we restock before we run out. So a couple of examples there, team. I want to show one last thing, right? If what we've shown today is really being proactive about working with the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, making decisions in real time to make sure we're more prepared. One thing that's really cool about the Semaphore platform is actually being able to use our data connections and deploy ML models to help us make predictions about the future. And so what I just asked this agent to do was help me forecast how many dairy products we're going to sell next week. I feel like we always run out, and I want to make sure that we're prepared for next week. And in the run book, I gave it some context to say, hey, you have access to the transactional data from the past. And also, here's a couple of other things that impact our sales that we've noticed. Weather data, upcoming promotions seem to have a big impact on the demand. And so what this agent's going to do is use a series of actions to go check the weather data, check upcoming promotions that we have, and then actually run those things against our historical data and actually create some predictions about how many units we're going to sell for each one of these types of products over the next couple of weeks. And so this is just an example of how we might visualize that in the agent. We get a great summary table here of the total number of units. And again, information is great, but I want some insights and some recommendations. We've asked the agent to help us with that in the run book. And so we get some impacts from external factors, a summary of those, as well as, a couple of recommendations down here below on to help us zero in on whole milk and heavy cream are the two things we need to focus on, making sure we get a reorder in to help address the upcoming demand in the next week. So team, just a very quick example. I'll kind of pause there. Please continue to post any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll make sure to either answer them here in the chat or towards the end. One last thing I wanted to show you before we jump back into the slides is, if you guys remember to the very beginning of the demo, this is all built locally on my computer to help me make sure I've got this agent fine-tuned and it's working as I've expected. A lot of you here are coming from large enterprise organizations, and you want to be able to not just run these locally on your computer, but be able to deploy them at scale in your enterprise. And so, team, once you've got an agent built, we want to just quickly walk you through. We'll probably have future webinars to give you the nitty-gritty details, but just to show you that we have a platform to help you manage this at scale. Once you've built an agent, you can actually click here and publish this agent directly to your control room, and that is going to go directly into your environment. We deploy directly into your cloud and your environment. So we never have access to your agents, your data, any of your secrets or logs. You would publish that out to your control room. And then what that agent would do is appear here in your agent gallery, right? This is, as you can see now, a web-based portal where you've got access to see. This is more of an administrator view. You can see and manage all of your agents that you have access to here. You can organize which agents are deployed by a concept we have called workspaces. What you're seeing here on the screen is how we see most of our customers organize their agents. Typically have, you want to separate agents for sales from finance agents, from HR agents. You may even want to separate further for things like development environments, production environments, and things like that. And so as you start to look at these agents, you've got the ability to deploy them into these workspaces so that they can run and then be shared with your users. Once you've deployed an agent and you have a list of deployed agents here, you can actually go directly into the workroom. And this is really what your end users would experience to be able to go see what agents they have access to through their role-based access controls, and then be able to work with their agents, ask questions about their agents, and really monitor those worker agents that might be reaching out to them for help or to give them some contextual information. So team, just a quick walk through the platform there. Hopefully that was helpful and relatable. Anything to add there, Jamie, while I'm getting back to the slides?
I think you did awesome, James. We'll have some questions. I see some questions streaming through. We'll run through those at the end, though, I think.
Awesome. So team, just to wrap up here on the walkthrough section, just wanted to give you a quick recap of what you just saw. That's what we always love to do here. So I want this image to hopefully resonate with you. It's one we love to show because the way we think about semaphore agents is the phrase we use is left brain, right brain, hands and feet. And think of our agents as they have a right brain component that is, the business logic that we would define in the run book, right? This is the business logic that helps train the agent on the context that it needs to make good decisions and how it should reason through all of the data that it's accessing to help take the right action and make the right decisions. All of that is, enabled by your choice of LLM, whether that's Anthropic, OpenAI through Azure, just to name a few. And those are all defined by your analysts, your business process owners. And then there's the other side of the coin of the brain, and that's the data sources, right? Ultimately, most work requires access to some type of data to help make decisions and get context to do that reasoning, right? So in this example, we looked at our inventory records, our transaction records, both in Snowflake, and then some external data that we might get from weather sources and things like that. And then ultimately the hands and feet, right? The things that really get this work done are the actions. And so we showed you a couple of actions from actually going and getting the expiring items, updating our sales prices, getting the low stock details, and ultimately actually making a prediction about next week. And so all this we showed in a conversational mode just to walk you through what that interaction might look like. But if you think about that full flow we just walked through, for most of our customers team, we can actually build that into a worker agent where this is happening either on a recurring basis or it's listening for some type of a signal to go run through those checks and then take action accordingly as it comes back with the data. So that's that example. Just to help expand the mind, start to think about art of the possible. We wanted to pull in a couple of other just high level examples of high level use cases we've been working with other customers so that you can start to see that the Semaphore agent platform is not just for supply chain or just for finance or just for legal use cases. It's really meant to be a horizontal platform that you can build for all agents for all of your lines of business. And so, one of those examples here of a trend that we've seen across a lot of customers is this concept of import and export control. One example specifically is, a large retail company that works with hundreds of customers across 30 plus countries, and they work across so many countries. they've got so many import and export documentations and taxes they have to pay to get those goods across the border. They hire a third party to actually manage all that for them, and they package all those details up and they send them an invoice with the customs details plus some additional fees. And ultimately, we have to reconcile that that invoice matches the customs documents, and ultimately, it's going to match our records on our internal system. So this is really just a high-level reconciliation use case. But because there's so many countries that we work in, and there's so many products that we're in shipments that we're pushing over the border, this requires a lot of hands-on work. So that's kind of goes to this picture here in the bottom right. To get this work done today, it just takes an army of people sitting in chairs and going through all these documents, comparing them side by side, and ultimately doing a lot of copy paste, right? And so we're helping them use agents to be able to parse those unstructured documents, work with structured data to be able to reconcile those together to make sure that all the data matches before we submit a payment. And ultimately, this is going to reduce their workload by significant margin. Another example that's near and dear to my heart, a lot of my experience in the past has been implementing software systems, specifically large SAP systems in the HR space. And I've just noticed it's been exciting to see that this is a problem that we can tackle with customers now through AI agents. Is it feels like in the context of HR, this onboarding management flow always creates some struggle in organizations. There's so much work that has to be done from the time an employee accepts an offer through the talent acquisition process to the time we get them, approved, set up, collected their documents, and create a profile in our HR or HCM system. There's a lot of copy paste that has to happen. Oftentimes we have to go back to the user to say, hey, we lost your email, or we need you to validate your XYZ piece of data. And AI agents are really great to be able to help us, one, maintain that data throughout the onboarding process to give the onboardee or the candidate a better experience, but also to be able to help us with that kind of complex, ETL type activities where we're taking data, we need to make sense of what that data means, and ultimately we need to go do something with it downstream. In this case, actually get that employee onboarded into our system, make sure we have all of their data collected, and then do things like schedule their onboarding training on their first day, right? And make sure they're ready to go on their first day. And we've notified or taken action on all of our other ticketing systems to make sure that they get a laptop, they get a badge, they have all the information they need and passwords and Microsoft Teams accounts and things like that. So just a couple other hopefully illustrative examples, team, of types of things that agents can do and some things that we see as really exciting in the marketplace. So Jamie, I'll throw it back to you to kind of wrap us up and walk through a couple of other key points.
I love it. Thank you, James. Awesome demo, by the way. Don't you think it was impressive that he thought about adding weather into that one, by the way? Good work, James. I do think it's one of those things where as you get wiser and wiser with the use of agents, your thought process and logic for how you solve problems evolves and it gets better and better. So it's just an example of that. I think what you saw in the semaphore approach, number one, is we believe that the outcomes are owned by the line of business, and therefore the line of business needs to own the definition. And that's why we are 100% invested in natural language runbooks. So that's step one. You saw James show kind of an empty one or a template, and then you saw him show the one that he ran through today. Runbooks drive everything we do in Semaphore. So number one is line of business owner needs to own and drive the work. Therefore, runbooks are the only way to fundamentally do that. Number two that we think is important, and you saw today, is it's got to be data driven, whether that's Redshift, whether that's Snowflake, whether that's any of the structured sources, or whether that's semi-structured or unstructured, whether you're feeding it in annual reports in PDF form, or you get invoices from your customers in PDF form or other. that semi-structured and unstructured data can also be fed in. The benefit of LLMs and the benefit of the semaphore approach is we can handle all of that structured, semi-structured, and fully unstructured data. The third thing I would say is automation as code, whether it's integration with next-gen tools through APIs, through browser automation, through app automation, et cetera. At the end of the day, for an agent to be useful, it has to do work. For it to do that notion of the arms and the legs, it has to integrate into your existing tools today and actually produce outcomes. So you'll see that that automation as code is fundamental to us. If you look at those three areas, that is what drives the semaphore approach. And hopefully you saw that today. With that, let's go one slide forward, James. One of the things I want to highlight, and I think it's super exciting, just last week we announced, in fairness, Snowflake announced Cortex and some extensions to it. As part of that, they announced Semaphore AI as part of their team and a partner for them to run within their Snowpark container service. The exciting thing, if you have data in Snowflake, it's a great place to go leverage your AI agents to go do work. And so we can run directly within Snowpark container services now. Means you take your agent, deploy directly into Snowflake, it runs against your data in Snowflake, and it lets you get all the power of an agent-based architecture, but native. Really interesting. We're seeing a lot of uptick in this and a lot of draw. Now we've got the power of an AI agent embedded in your data. James, we can keep going. I'm going to wrap this up and then we'll get into the Q&A side of it. If you think about how we think of the world, Semaphore is a platform, and we would argue we're the enterprise AI agent platform. What that means is we're not in one niche solving one problem. We are solving the complex end-to-end problems that exist in anything from supply chain to other areas of the business. So that's one of the key drivers for us. I would say the second key driver for us is we should be built by the business teams, partnered with IT, but driven by the business for the business. Mentioned it a few times, you'll hear us beat that drum pretty hard because we believe that's fundamental to agents solving and getting the outcome. The last things that we think is agents need to be both autonomous and human in the loop type work. So where things go well, it goes straight through. And other times where we need humans in the loop, it should be there. There's other times where it's pure conversational. And that's what James showed you today. And the last area is we go across the spectrum from finance, HR, sales, marketing, et cetera. So supply chain is one area, and it's one of our fastest growing areas, but it is one of the areas, and we have many more. With that, let's go one more slide, and we'll just recap and open up to Q&A. So a couple things. So hit our website. If you're interested in the team edition or Semaphore, if you hit the website, you'll be able to request access. That will go through a request process. We've also got full videos and blogs out there. We are looking to give instant downloadable, instant access. We're just not there yet, team. As a fast-growing software company, we just haven't quite got it out there yet to where you can instantly get access to it, but we will have that coming shortly. So hit us up, ask for the team edition. We'll get you on the list and we'll start working through it. With that, James, let's hit the next slide and we'll jump into some Q&A. With that, team, I'm going to scroll through the chat and try to answer the Q&A here. So let's go through these. I think the first question I'm seeing is on database access and access to different systems. And when do we use system access, et cetera. So a couple things you noticed in James's demo there, he was in studio some of the time, and then he went over to control room and workroom. Within studio, which is intended for the line of business person that's documenting the run book, the credentials are put into studio to access. So it access as if it's them. So that's step one. When I deploy to the control room out in the cloud, then there's a separate set of access credentials, typically service credentials that are used for the agent, but it is specific to the agent that you're using and the actions that you're using. But typically it's service credentials that are used for that. So that's Shams, thank you for the question, and hopefully that addresses it. Let me hit Grant's question. I happen to know this guy. And by the way, I'll warn you that if you're at AWS reInvent, he's not a good guy to drink beer with. Um, but I'm teasing you, Grant. Good to hear from you again. What's the fundamental difference between AI agents being shown here and a RAG application? I think it was hit a little further down, and there's nuance to that because it's a portion of both what we're doing. But if you think about a traditional RAG application, it's basically you're inputting something, it's going to go out to a vector, do a fuzzy match on that, take some set of that result set back, pass that off to the LLM and take the LLM back and give you a response. If you look at an AI agent, we're trying to make a deterministic set of steps that I give context to the LLM and the right set of context based on the step. So there's a few things that we do differently. So number one is we do a step-based approach. We track each step. For each step, we give only the right context to the LLM that it needs to then go process and move to the next step. What that does is it makes our approach much more deterministic, and it's part of the what we would consider to be the special sauce of semaphore. James, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think another great thing to pile on here, team, is the use of the semaphore actions, right? With, as Jamie alluded to, with the vector search, we get a lot of, and that's great. There's plenty of use cases where RAG is a great approach, but there's a lot of use cases where um, we need to manipulate data and work with data, not just fetch data. And ultimately, LLMs are really good at some of those things, but for things like math, we don't want to trust an LLM to give us a deterministic, repeatable response when there's a math equation involved, right? And so those are things we would build in actions to help you be able to get, not just 50, 60, 70% accuracy, but 100% repeatability and accuracy, because we know what the inputs are going to be, and we know exactly what steps that data is going to go through to get through that calculation if as needed.
Good deal. Thank you, James. I forgot. Good point. Um, just running through additional questions here. I hopefully explained where the connections are made for a database. They're made at the studio side for design time and then at runtime and control room, which is all of the services running out in the cloud. Next question. What costs are associated with the agent? Is it based on how many prompts we make, or will it be a monthly cost? Great question. So the agents, as they run, are leveraging the LLMs that you set them up to run on, whether that's Amazon, whether that's OpenAI directly, whether that's other. Um, Based on, as an example, Amazon using Bedrock, which uses Sonnet 3.5, and I'm sorry, Anthropic Claude Sonnet 3.5 for everybody. Um, there's a set of tokens used when we do work. So those tokens are based on your cloud account, and they will be paid by the customer. The second piece is our platform, and our platform, as of right now, is charged on a per agent deployed. We're moving it to more service based, but as of right now, it's generally a per agent deployed, but it's specific to the customer, and we work with customers on best models. Next question. What are the prerequisites for the developer to start working on your platform? So I think there's two sides to that. So for a developer, and I'm going to first start with remembering that we focus business user first and the notion of a run book, you would download the studio and start working with the studio. And as part of downloading and developing in the studio, the thing you would need access to is an LLM. So whether that's OpenAI or other. There's a second piece here, which is for a Python developer. So you would still have Studio, but you would also have either VS Code or Cursor, and then you would deploy the Semaphore plugin to that to actually let you go write the actions that then get deployed into the Studio and get consumed with your agents. James, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I think just to add on, Jamie, the Semaphore SDK, or the plugin, as we call it, is really a must-have when you're building these actions. We've got a lot of really great tooling that the team's built to help you be able to run debug actions, and actually deploy those directly to your studio, as opposed to having to export, manage dependencies, all that type of stuff. And so everything you need to be able to build these actions and package them up for an agent is built into that.
Awesome. Questions in here about RPA. I would say simple examples, and I agree with Romkey. RPA plus agentic AI is a killer combination. RPA has automated the mundane, I hate to put it in a box, but the mundane stuff that an agent-based architecture can leverage. So we are working hard to integrate. We've had customers do it as one hawk. In the next odd ad hoc, in the next release of our product, we will be integrating with a whole bunch of the RPA tools out of the box. So give us about another 45 days before we launch all the RPA plugins. So you could use any of the RPA solutions that you have out there. Today, it needs to be done through an action, and you would need to do it through Python code. That is being fixed in the next 45 days. So great question, and totally agree that these two are a perfect synergy together, especially for the customers that have done work there. Jan Kunik, a name I've recognized before as well. Good to hear from you, Jan. Do you have agents that use legacy interfaces such as SAP? So the answer is yes and yes. So typically we target to go through the APIs of the systems, and you saw a few of them that James highlighted. There's also the notion of going through forms. So I'll say click, scroll, etc. Those interfaces, we have done that in the RPA world, and is what we've historically done is leveraged RPA to go do that work because that's a typical RPA thing. We are looking to bring it in, but as of right now, we would probably leverage an RPA solution to go do that. If you spend any time looking at operator and some of those, the worries we have with like an open AI model is you're sending them your user ID password. It's running on their servers, connecting to your system. So we don't see that as really an enterprise use case. We see that as a personal use case. Where we run is in your cloud accounts in your environment. So we over time will be looking at doing more of the interfaces with forms and clicks. James, anything you'd add there?
No, I think you nailed it. Covered it well.
Awesome. Um, Team appreciated. Can agents be created and decisions orchestrated between them? Is what I think you're hitting here, Philippe, is the notion of what we call a multi-agent architecture. The answer is yes and yes, and it's done through a couple of different mechanisms. So there is the notion, and we have the notion by default within our agent architecture that an individual agent can have, if you will, the run book or the execution side, and then for each execution action can be a separate agent instantiation, or we can go out and as part of our agent lifecycle, as it's going through its lifecycle, it can trigger sub agents. They go through their lifecycle and then report back home. I would say that's mainly done through API right now. So that's a programming interface that we're working on to make it better and better so we can do it through less programmatic as of right now. There's a second piece to that, which typically comes up as you're doing this. Complexities come with anything. So if you think about an agent as similar to a person in that there's an amount of context that they have to do their work. When I go to a sub agent in a multi-agent architecture, there's times where I don't want it to have the context of the parent, whatever triggered it. And so I want that sub agent to run autonomously to completion and then, if you will, rally up to the parent agent. There's other times where I want all of the context of the parent to go through to the sub. So as an example, if I'm a plant worker, I want to understand what work orders are going to be impacted for a given work order. I want to trigger something else for that work order to be rolled to a different plant because my facility's down. I would want all the context to be shared amongst those two. That's something we're adding over the next, it's in the horizon for the road book. It's probably, I think we're thinking 3 to 6 months. We'll be adding that notion of sharing agent context across. As of right now, it's not been a driving requirement, but it's a great question, Philippe. We're looking at doing both scenarios. Thank you, Atif, on the links. What is recommended deployment architecture options for enterprises? Sham's good question. James, do we have the deployment architecture in our docs, public docs?
It should be out there. Yep. Should be out on the site and we can work on, let me see if I can find a link really quick.
Try to push that out. Our approach to date, Shams, the question is how do builders get enabled? I think there's a couple of things. Number one is we're trying to make it so that building agents are really simple. So kind of AI for AI, if you will. So using AI to build AI. I think Cursor's done the best job out of anything I've seen in doing that on the developer side, but not for the business user side. So we are working to do this. How we've done that to date is for customers, we do a series of workshops, and that series of workshops is the ramping enablement. As of right now, Semaphore doesn't have a services arm. We're trying to stay away from having a services arm, and we're working with a lot of ISV partners that will help us, ISV and SI partners to help us to be the arms and legs of Semaphore to grow. So we're looking for SI partners that can go help us with this. Yeah, great question, Manjeet. How is this different than Microsoft Copilot Studio? Um, so if you look at Microsoft, when you look at Copilot, kind of each project or each product has a Copilot that's unique. They secondarily have a studio environment that is kind of an additional unique area. And then on top of that, they take their Copilot studio and plug it into typically like a Teams or something else. Is what we've seen is most people find complexity with the Copilot Studio. It's really good for doing Microsoft things, but when I look at an agentic platform that has to run across all my systems, it becomes very difficult to do that. So what we've seen is customers where they're really interested in, hey, my organization works out of Teams exclusively. Can we plug your agent into leverage Microsoft Teams, almost like Copilot does, and leverage it so directly within Teams I can do all the work I need to do, but I'm leveraging your enterprise platform on the back end. And interestingly, Manjeet, we're releasing that in the next 30 days to be able to plug into Teams to go um, do all the work that you want to do across the enterprise platform. The biggest difference between Microsoft Copilot and us is it depends on which area, I'll say, but we're across the enterprise, they tend to be exclusive to the Microsoft platform. And I'm sure they, like everybody, they've got APIs, but I think it's the ability to do broad brush. Who do you consider to be your agent technology solutions providers, competing agent technology solution providers? I think I tried to show a little bit of Mahesh on the first slide, but it depends on what you're trying to do. So I think if you're a developer and trying to develop solutions, I think there's LangChain and that stuff. We don't really see those in our problems because we believe that fundamentally it's a business decision. But I think those tend to be one side of the solution. The Microsoft Copilots and stuff, as people dig deeper into those, they tend to realize that they're fairly surface level and they're not really an enterprise agent platform. But those tend to be another bucket. And then the point providers to solve point problems at a certain level compete in our space. So lots of different answers to that question. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. You know what? We're at the top of the hour. I'm not going to get through all these. I'm just looking through. Do you have any plans to support the pro development persona? Um, cracks me up. We're not a low code, no code solution. In our opinion, we are a business solution that requires code to do actions. And so we would say we're pro developer, where developers can bring the most value, and we're pro business, where business can bring the most value. So we would say we try to stay away from the no code, low code solutions. Hopefully that answers. Holy cow, I'm not getting through these, but we'll take a pause here, team. Hopefully it was helpful. We wanted to finish at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, and this will all be posted out for you. With that, thank you, team.
Thanks, everyone.